So I've got here a couple of pieces of 8mm dowel, and that's 5/16 of an inch, and I've cut it to 21mm long, and that's 13/16 of an inch. I've then drilled a 0.75mm hole in the centre of each one, just at the top, and that's 1/32 of an inch, or just your smallest bit, big enough to fit a dressmaking pin, which is what we're going to be using to attach the lampshade. And you want to drill down by about 6mm or 1/4 of an inch, and you can check that by pushing a dressmaking pin into the drilled hole, putting your thumbnail at the top and then pulling it out. So do that with both of your pieces of dowel. And then I want to create a different type of base for each lamp. So one of them I'm going to wrap round with cord, and the other one I want to paint red and white striped to look a bit like a lighthouse. So I'm going to start with my painted one, and it helps to hold on to it if you actually push the dressmaking pin into the hole, and then you can hold on to the pin whilst you paint. And I'm going to start off with a white base. And then once this is completely dry, I'm going to use some thin strips of masking tape to mask off the stripes. And then I'm going to use my red acrylic paint to create the stripes. And if you're using a little scrap piece of dowel, just make sure first of all that you've got a flat bottom. So just stand it up on your work table rather than your cutting mat, and make sure it stands straight. And if not, you can straighten that off then by sawing it before you actually cut it to length, and that's what I did with both of these pieces. These were just some little pieces I had in one of my drawers. And I'm just using acrylic paint for the stripes because I haven't got an emulsion paint in red. Acrylic paint works just as well if you wanted to use a red and a white acrylic. I'm going to put a little bit on that top as well, because that might just be visible when the lampshade is in place. And then I'm going to have to find my piece of sponge. I haven't got it here, but what you can actually do then is push the pin into the piece of sponge, and that can then be left to dry. Or if you can't find your bit of sponge, then into an eraser. And then for my rope lamp, I've got this lovely sort of turquoise blue 1mm cord here. And again, I've put the dressmaking pin into the base. And I'm just going to cover the base with glue. And then we're going to wrap the cord around. And this blue cord is a perfect match for the blue of the fabric that I used for the sofa. So I think I'll use that same fabric for the lamps. That might look quite nice. Okay, so take the end of your cord and lay it across the bottom of the dowel. It's always the getting started which is the tricky bit. Get that there like that, and then I'm trying to just press it into place with my nail, and then hold it down and start wrapping it around. Once you've been around a few times, it gets easier, but make sure you're sort of right along the bottom there. So you haven't got any dowel showing beneath the cord. Push it down with your fingers. Be prepared to get a bit gluey. And then you can just start wrapping it round. And every so often just sort of stop and push all the pieces of cord together so you're keeping it nice and tight. Just a little bit more. And when you get to the top, try and work it so that you're cutting the cord off at the same edge that you joined it on. So there's my back bit there. I'm just going to push that all down a bit. Got a little bit more room there if I push it all together. And if you take your time to get started, as I did, sometimes the glue dries up or dries onto your fingers, so you can just put a little bit more on. And then we can go round again. Like that. And then I can cut off at that back edge there. Snip that off. Like that. And don't worry if you've got a bit of glue on the cord, as I have, because you can either just pick that off once it's dry, and in other places it will just dry clear. So I'm now going to leave that one to dry as well. So whilst those lamp bases are drying, I just want to carry on with our unit, and I've made a couple of doorknobs just using the cocktail stick technique, which I'm sure you're all familiar with by now. So I just want to attach those first, and I've made a couple of little pencil marks there in the centre of those door mouldings. Got along those tweezers here, makes the job a bit easier. In fact, what I'm going to do is just put a little dot on each of my pencil marks and then just pop the cocktail sticks into place. Oops. Like that. And if you wanted to use a sort of pre-turned doorknob, you can do, but if you didn't want to drill through, you can just cut the little stem off and then just stick the knob into place. And when you're sort of doing a false door, it doesn't have to be as secure as it would if you would actually be opening and closing the door. These work quite well, and they're a cheaper option as well. Just making sure they actually look level from the front there. I think I need to go up with that one a tiny bit. So I also want to get the top piece glued into place. So I've got my masking tape here and my clamps. Put that pencil away. So apply glue to the top of the unit. Like that. And then, oops, just put my finger in the glue. As usual, the straight edge of the top piece will go along the back of the unit, and we'll have an even overhang at each side. So get that into position. Make sure we've got that flush line along the back there. Give it a press. Have a look for any excess glue. I just need to go back that side a little bit. I can come over a bit as well, I think. And put one closer to the back like that. Another piece there like that. Goes down nice and tightly. And then I'll put my row of clamps along the front edge. Really hold that down. And that piece can then be left to dry. Okay, so back to our lamps, and I've stuck a piece of masking tape here on a clean patch of my cutting mat, and I've used my craft knife to slice it into 3mm strips like that. And I'm going to use those to mask off my lamp. So I'm going to start around the bottom edge there. These are far too long. Fold it in like that. And then I'm just really going to measure by eye rather than making a 3mm measurement. So I'll just pop the next one about there. like that. And then I'll get one more around the top there. I think that looks about even. I'm pressing those down quite firmly so that none of the paint seeps underneath. So I've got here my acrylic paint, Crimson Red, and because I really do only need a tiny little bit, I'm just going to put a little bit on this piece of card and on the shiny side of the card, and then I can just throw that away when I'm finished and I haven't got anything to clean up, and that's probably more than I need there. And I've got my smaller detailing brush in, my 00. So let's have a go. So that's my stripes painted in, and I now want to leave this to dry completely before I remove the masking tape. So again, I'm just going to stick that into that eraser. Like that. And put that to one side to dry. And in the meantime, we can continue with our other lamp. Okay, so there's my lamp base, and I just used a little bit of acrylic paint to paint that top area. And the colour doesn't exactly match, but it just takes away from that sort of glaring natural wood that was at the top there, and which we will be able to see just below the lampshade. But what you could do is even put a little bit more cord around that top area if you wanted to, so just wind it around the pin there. And then for the actual shade, I've got here a piece of card, just nice thin white card, and that measures 19mm high, so 3/4 of an inch, by 77mm, so 3 inches and 1/16. And I want to make a lampshade that is sort of 19 by 19, so a 19mm diameter as well. So just begin by sort of curling the card, and this makes it more easy to shape around. And then you can put it into a cylinder like that and measure that you've got your sort of 19mm. I can just let that out a little tiny bit, and then holding on to that, just draw a pencil line along the join there. Make sure the two sides are lined up. Pencil line along there, then we'll know where we have to stick it back down again. And then I'm going to apply double-sided tape to each side. Before you do that, cut your piece of fabric, and this is obviously the same length and then twice the thickness. And then we're going to wrap it around like that and fold it into the inside of the cylinder. So apply the double-sided tape. Like that. Snip that off, and then you can put the piece on the other side, and then it just makes it easier to trim off when you've got it on both sides. Your scissors don't get so sticky then. And then cut off the excess there. Like that. You can then remove both lots of tape back in. Just trim that extra bit off. I thought I was following the line of the card, but left a bit there. Move the back in on the other side as well. Like that. And then you want to glue that back into the cylinder, and you can see your pencil line through there. When I say glue, I mean stick, because we're obviously sticking it with the double-sided tape, like that. And then bring in your piece of fabric, and the join obviously acts as the back of the lampshade now. So bring your piece of fabric around. And there as well. You can trim off that bit of excess. Oops. Got my lamp flying then as well. And then push in the top and bottom like that, and stick it to the tape. So push it in there like that, and then sort of really get in with your fingers and press it against the tape, and that way you're getting a nice straight edge. And I've done the fabric longer this time so that then you can't see any of the card when the sort of shade is in place. Before I've just sort of done a little overlap, but you can still see the white, so it looks better this way. But make sure you've got a nice neat edge at each side. Press it in, use your nails to really press it down. If you've got any little lumps, you can sometimes lift it up and reposition like that. And then I just want to trim a little bit off of this pin, because that's going to be a little bit too high, so take that out of there. So I just want to trim probably about 1/4 of an inch off the end of the pin there, and you want to take that off of the pointed end, so you've still got your little head bit there. Snip that off. Like that. I'll pop that back in a minute. So I've also just cut here another strip of my card. That's only about 3 or 4 millimeters wide and longer than the opening of your lamp. And then what you want to do is fold over a little bit at each end so that it fits nicely inside the lamp. So fold one end and then you can make a little mark where you want the other fold, but don't go too short, because it's better that it's tighter than looser, or too tight than too baggy sort of thing. And then you want to make a little hole in the centre of that. So I'm just going to measure between those folds. Let me just make sure that I've folded enough. No, I think I need to go a little bit more. Let's have a go with that. Yeah, that's a nice fit in there now. So make a little pencil mark in the centre of the folds. That'll be there. And you can make a little hole. So I'm just going to get another little pin to do that. Something with a point on it. Go over there on my cutting mat. Push that down, push it down with your pliers if you don't want to press your finger on the top there. Make sure you're all the way through. And then poke your cut pin through. Oops, into my finger. And then just pop a little tiny bit of glue, which will be under the head of the pin. Just around your little hole there. Push that down. And then we're going to do the same on each end of those little flaps, and that will be the bit that we stick inside the lamp. My glue has got a little bit dry. I'm just using my wood glue for this. So make sure you've got your seam at the back, that's there, and then pop that inside. And then it might help actually to use tweezers to do this, but just push your card up only a few millimetres. You want to just leave a little border like that inside, and you want to make sure that you're straight at each side, so our lamp's actually going to sit straight. I'll just grab my tweezers. I'm happy with the positioning of that side, so I'm going to press that one into place. And I think I need to go up that side a bit. Press that into place as well. So that's then stuck in there like that. And then just put a little bit of glue as well around the hole that we've drilled in the lamp base. And then you can push the pin in. Try not to sort of push the pin out of the paper. And then get your lamp into a nice position. I think I might need to put a little bit more glue around the pin head there so that it doesn't fall down. And I also just twisted that around so that the join in the back of the cord is also at the back and level with that seam at the back of the lamp, like that. So let's go and put that into place. So that one's going to sit over in the corner there, and I just put a little bit of tacky wax on the base of the lamp there to fix that into place, and we'll be adding some price tags and everything to those bits. It looks quite nice in that corner. And then you'll see that I finished off these crocheted cushions at the weekend, but I do just want to make another couple of fabric cushions just to go behind those. So I'll try and get that done today as well. And now I want to get back to the other lamp. So my little stripy lamp base is now dry. So let's remove the tape, if I can find the end, and see how it looks. Oh, that's quite good. Nice sharp line there. No bleeding, that looks nice. Can't see the ends at all, I'm just having to sort of feel for them. A tiny little bit of bleeding, but so little that you're not going to be able to see that from a distance once this is sitting on its table. Not better than I thought it'd be as well. Something really satisfying, isn't there, about taking the tape off when you've done this sort of thing. That's stuck to itself, so let's just pull that off that way. Yeah. Quite pleased with that. I'm going to take that pin out of there and get my pliers. What I've done is I've made a second lamp, and this time on my little card strip I used double-sided tape at the edges and where the pin goes through instead of glue, and it's just a lot easier to work with because you haven't got to wait for ages for the glue to dry. So now let's push, let me just pop a little bit of glue on there and then I can push that into place. A little bit in there like that. Just helps to hold that pin into place then. And I'm pulling the pin head back against the double-sided tape in there, just really gently so you don't sort of pull it all out of place. And there's our second little lamp. I really like that. I think that base makes it look really good. So let's put this one into place as well, and I'll start by adding a little bit of tacky wax to the bottom. I feel that it's going to be a little bit top heavy. And that one sits on the other side. I think that looks really nice. So that one is acting there as a bedside table for the bed and side tables for the sofa as well. And I really like all those flashes of red. I think red is a nice nautical colour. So the cupboard unit is now ready for paint, and I'm going to do this in the Vancouver again, which is the colour I used for the large unit up here on the first floor. I thought about doing it in blue, but I think the final 2 units I'll do in Vancouver, and then it's a better background for all of the miniatures that we're going to display on there. So I've given this piece a final sand, just using a 500 grade sandpaper, and that was just to remove the pulls that the masking tape had left on there. And I've got my Vancouver here. So this piece has now had 2 coats of paint, and that's now completely dry. So I'm going to pop that into place in the shop. And I think I'm going to have that one over there near our wall shelves, and then the little blue unit, and then we'll have the final unit over here, and that will also be in the Vancouver. Now, I only just sort of realised this, but originally I made the narrower shelf to go on the first floor, as you know, and I was going to have the units down here as high as this top shelf, so that it all sort of ran along that back wall nice and flush. So I was a little bit annoyed when I remembered that. But what we'll do is we'll have some taller items on top of the units and some lower items on top of this higher shelf, so that that will still sort of run along nicely along that back wall there. It'll look more sort of intentional. But what I want to do now is actually get on with making some more accessories. So I've got here my tin of shells, and I'm going through and pulling out shells that measure from about 6mm to 10mm, or 1/4 of an inch to just over 3/8 of an inch. And I've got here this little blue glass bowl, and I actually sell these in my Etsy shop. I only had this one left, but I've ordered some more in because I think they're really nice, and I'll probably take another sort of 2 or 3 of those, and we can dot those around the shop in different areas and with different things in them. But for this one I want to fill it with these conch shells, and then I can put a little sign on the table, or a little price label saying conch shells $2.99 each or something like that. And I've just used my tacky wax to put a slightly larger shell in the bottom there, just to fill the bowl out a bit. And I think these do glue, but because the glue takes quite a long time to dry on this sort of surface, as you're sticking them into place they're moving around. So I'm actually just going to use the tacky wax to stick them all in. And I also like to use a cocktail stick to get at the tacky wax, because I find if you just use your nail it can make your fingernails really sore. So just try and apply it with a cocktail stick instead of sort of just scooping it out. And then just sort of stick them around randomly, getting as many in as you can. And whilst I was going through the tin, I've started pulling out some of these really tiny little shells, which are really nice. And these are probably, I don't know, 3 to 5mm in length. And these will be really useful for our little shell frames, our little sort of 3D shell frames. Maybe we could do some little boxes covered in shells and things like that. So what I'll do is I'll get a little bag in a moment, and I'll put all the small ones in. And then each time I come back to the tin, I can take out any of the little tiny ones, which have all sort of fallen to the bottom now. But it's good fun sort of searching through for different types of shells. I could spend all day looking at them. I think shells are so lovely. So there's my little bowl of shells. And when you're sort of gluing them into place, think about how they'd sit naturally, so they don't look like they're sort of unnaturally balanced in there. And also clear away any of the tacky wax that you can see around the edge of the bowl. I think sometimes big blobs of tacky wax can sort of ruin your display. So you want it to all look as sort of naturally sitting in there as possible. And then this I want to put on the little coffee table on the first floor. Let's go and do that now. I've put one of the little sculptures on there already. And I'm not going to use tacky wax to put any of this. Oops, camera's flopping about. to put any of this in place yet, because obviously I might want to change where I have things. I think that looks quite good. And then we'll have a little label down here, like I say, advertising the price of the shells. That one might be a bit too pale against the background. Let's try a nice dark blue ship there. And again, all this will probably change as we sort of start adding more and more accessories. Okay, so now I want to have a think about these bare walls. So this image here that I saved at the beginning of the project is my inspiration for that back wall on the first floor, only obviously on a larger scale. So I want lots of pictures and then lots of different bits. So I've got here my scrapbook cards, and I've pulled out the ones that have got some really nice images on them that I can cut out to create some pictures. Sort of different sizes there. And I've got 2 of those, and then these little ready-made framed pictures that we can use as well. I've also got here my 3 ship's wheels, one of each size, and I'm going to paint those up, and I thought that would make a nice little sort of feature on the wall. And I've also had some ideas of making like a little wooden row of beach huts and sort of hanging it with a piece of string. But I'll do that in the next episode. But what I want to do now is actually start cutting out some of these images, and then what I like to do when I use sort of like a paper picture is to back it onto a piece of wood, just to make it look a little bit more solid, because I always think you can tell if you've just stuck a piece of paper to a wall. And then what we'll do is put a little bit of strip wood on the back as well, so that the picture actually looks like it's hanging and not just stuck flat to the wall. So let me grab my scissors and I'll get cutting. So there are all of my cutouts, and all of these smaller ones you can see here are just from one of those 2 sheets. That hole you can see there I used for something else a little while ago, but look how many I got just from that sheet. And I thought I might lose some through sort of cutting lines and things, but I was able to save all of them bar about 2, so that's really good. And then what I thought I'd do with all of these smaller ones is use them on the boat shelf. And I can't remember where I saw it now, but I saw a picture of one of these boat type shelves, and it was filled with photo frames and it looked really good, so I'd like to recreate that. And I think they'll look really nice on there as well with those dark frames. So I've got here a box of scrap wood, and this is one that I just keep in all odd bits, different types of wood, different thicknesses, and I'm going to use as many of these bits that I can to back some of these onto. So the first thing to do is really just cut your wood to size. And I'd say probably don't use anything thicker than a 1.5mm or 1/16 of an inch sheet, as you don't want them to look too hefty. And for the larger ones you can sort of measure and then cut your wood, but for these smaller ones you can just lay them onto the wood and cut around them. Just be careful you're not actually cutting into your picture. Go across carefully like that. Always be careful of your fingers when you're sort of cutting freehand as well. Trim off a little bit at the top there, like that. And then what I've got here is a box of colouring pencils. Now obviously you can use paint, but it's going to take a lot longer and then you've got to wait for it to dry as well. So what I'm going to do is just go around the edge, so just find a sort of similar coloured pencil, and then you can just pencil around the edge. And this doesn't have to be an exact match, it's just really to get rid of that sort of glaring, not glaring, but you know, the natural wood that you would be able to see really clearly if you didn't do this. So just go around with a bit of pencil. And these are going to be on the back wall as well, so it's not going to be as noticeable. But if you're sort of having them on a side wall or using them as a photograph on a table or on a side or something, then you want to make sure you colour the frame. And then you simply want to glue the picture to the piece of wood. So apply glue to the wood. Like that. And then pop the picture on. Lined up nicely there. And then these three I've chosen to have as little stand-in frames on our coffee table. So I'm going to make little stands for the back of them as well. So to make a little stand, I've got here a strip of wood which is 5mm, 13/64 of an inch by 1.5mm thick, 1/16 of an inch. So you want to cut a strip from that that's shorter than your frame. Go like that. And then cut it from corner to corner. Making two sort of long triangles. And then apply glue to the long edge. And then stick that to the back of your frame so that the bottom of that long edge is at the bottom of the frame, so that it's sitting sort of centrally as well. Just need to straighten that up. Press that into place. And that stands up like that. And then that second one I can use for the medium-sized picture there, or frame. You could make a little mark in the centre if you want to, but just do it by eye. Just want to make sure that it's level at the bottom there. Put that into place as well. Nice together. And then this one I'll cut a little bit longer. Oops. Again, cut from corner to corner. Because this is a little bit longer, I'm going to use my steel rule, so just place it across like that. And then I can keep that other one for a similar sized picture. You could use a bit of stiff card for your stand if you wanted to, and either do it this way or sort of shape it into an L shape and then glue it to the back. There, like that. Try those three together. Okay, let's go and put those into place on the coffee table. So I haven't actually attached those into place yet, in case we change our mind once we've got a few more accessories to play around with. But I actually really like how that looks. And I'll do something similar here on the blanket chest as well. So I'll choose a few more pictures to go on there. And I didn't actually get around to making those cushions for the sofa, but I will try and do that at the weekend. And while I'm at it, I'll make a few more to go on our corner shelves down here. Okay, so back to the pictures. So I've mounted a couple of the larger cutouts as well. And when I'm going to hang them to a wall, I just add a bit of strip to the back. Just position it probably about 9mm from the top, so about 3/8 of an inch, and just sort of centralise it there like that. And then when you hang that against the wall, it doesn't just look flat against the wall, it does look as though it is actually attached as a proper picture would be. And this one I'm actually going to have above our little unit here. And again, I don't want to stick it into place yet, just because I might change my mind on the picture that I'm going to use there. So I'll just stand that there for now. I'll just knock that little fish off. So that will go on there. And then the other one that I did, sorry for spinning you around, I think I'm just going to stand on that back shelf in there. Have that stood at the back there to fill out that taller shelf. And then I can stand some bits in front of it as well. That looks quite nice as well. So I'm going to put all of these to one side for now, and I'll actually finish backing all of these onto wood in between episodes, so I'll have all those ready for the next episode. And my final little job for today's episode is just to paint these ship's wheels. Now they've got a nice little hole in the middle there that I can push onto the end of a cocktail stick, so that makes them easy to hold while I'm painting them. And I'm going to do these in the navy blue so that they really stand out against that back wall. So that's those done, and I've just tucked those into that sponge, and I'll now leave those to dry. And that's good timing because it's now lunchtime. Okay, so that's it for today. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode and the tutorials that I've included today. I'm really pleased with how the shop's coming along. Let me know what you think as well. And in the next episode, we'll be making loads more accessories to start filling all of those shelves and all the different areas of the shop. So until then, take care. Bye.